Question number 3 in the name of Deputy Clare Daly.
Thanks, Ceann Comhairle. Minister, this question is on behalf of the group of TDs cross-party who regularly visit Mughaberry, and obviously comes on the back of the damning inspection that took place in that prison. Now, you're aware that since the 2010 agreement, there's been various initiatives to try and get the stocktake agreement implemented. But we've come to the conclusion now that there must be another agenda at foot, because there doesn't seem to be any desire on the prison authorities for a resolution here. So I'm wondering, have you raised this issue with the various ministers, how you read the International Red Cross process, which seems to be at a crossroads at the moment?
Thank you.
I met last Friday, Ceann Comhairle, with Northern Ireland Minister Justice David Ford. We discussed in detail the situation at Mughaberry Prison, including the regime for separated prisoners. My last meeting with Secretary of State Theresa Villers was on the 17th of November, as we concluded the negotiation of the Fresh Start Agreement. We will meet before the end of this month, when I will again raise non-devolved matters relating to Mughaberry directly with her. It's my understanding that there are no proposals to change the current regime for separated prisoners at Mughaberry. Implementation of the Independent Assessment Team's recommendation remains the responsibility of the Northern Ireland Prison Service. In our discussion last week, Minister Ford noted that while there had been some progress, full implementation had been affected by trust issues arising in part from the sense of a threat to staff. This echoed a statement from the Northern Ireland Prison Service qualifying its commitment to the recommendations by making them conditional on, and I quote, an environment where staff are free from threat and intimidation, unquote. Can I say, Ceann Comhairle, the naming of individuals by prisoners in public statements may not have been intended by them to be seen as threatening. However, having read their statements, I can understand if those named were to consider them intimidatory. It's my strong view that the full implementation of the recommendations of the Independent Assessment Team is dependent upon the establishment of a reasonable level of trust between the relevant staff and prisoners. I believe the Deputy will agree with me in that regard, that there needs to be a regime of trust. Among the challenges I discussed with Minister Ford were the obstacles to the operation of the Prison Forum, which since July 2015 was chaired by a representative of the International Committee of the Red Cross. A functioning forum would make an important contribution to reducing tensions at Mughaberry. My officials maintain regular contact with the chair of the Prison Forum and also with the members of the Independent Assessment Team.
Well, I'm glad that the Minister has raised the issues with Minister Ford. We are actually very concerned about what is going on there at the moment. We wouldn't agree with Minister Ford's assessment that there has been progress made. In actual fact, the proposals which were put forward not by the prisoners but actually by the International Red Cross have been stymied by prison authorities. And you see, we keep coming back to this mysterious threat scenario, but we have to put on record again that there's no factual basis for any threats whatsoever. Prison officers have been attacked in other parts of the prison, not in the segregated wing. In actual fact, it's a fact that 2 senior governors were caught on CCTV on the 5th of November this year actually falsifying a threat from a Republican prisoner, which has gone to the prisoner ombudsman and legal representatives. So this is, in our opinion, a tactic being used to delay and stymie the process. We think, and our belief is, that a progressive system should be put in, obviously one that doesn't compromise security, but I don't think you're getting the full version. I'll make a point about the role of the security forces in my reply, but I do think their hand is at play in this.
Minister.
Well, I'm sure, Ceann Comhairle, all deputies will agree that there is absolutely no room or place for any form of threats or intimidation, implied or otherwise. And you know, I believe it's important that we make that absolutely clear in the context of a functioning democracy. Could I add, for the benefit of the deputy, that in the course of my meeting with Minister Ford, he updated me on progress on the implementation of the recommendations of the recent report by Criminal Justice Inspector Brendan McGuigan into conditions in the prison at Mughaberry. I expressed my concerns at the deficiencies identified within the prison which affect the entire prison population and prison staff, not just those in a separated regime. It's a matter of concern to me that the inspectors found that the demands of the separated unit are undermining the work within the whole prison to the detriment of the majority of the prison population. One of my officials met yesterday with the Criminal Justice Inspector to discuss the findings of the report, and they have agreed to remain fully in contact. The Criminal Justice Inspector will return to Mughaberry in January to monitor progress, and I hope that he'll be in a position to report that significant progress has been made in terms of improving outcomes for all prisoners at Mughaberry.
We've met Loyalist and Republican prisoners who are involved in this process, and both sides aren't happy, but we'd have to say that the Republican side are more unhappy, probably reflecting the cultural problems that are there. And I think it is important. The issue of threats keep being used, and obviously we would be completely opposed to any threats taking place, but we have to say again, there's no evidence of any threats, and no activity of any negative character has been taking place in the segregated wing against every staff. On the other hand, we do see the hand of the security forces and MI5 in particular operating in the prison. It is a fact that there is a very close link between the DUP and the POA, and we've some of the problems, I suppose, that had to be addressed in the PSNI. I'm not saying they were sorted, about cultural background of staff still exists in the prison service, and it does need to be broken up, if you like, and a new overhaul of prison staff if there is to be equity and human rights respectful regime there. So I am glad that you're raising it, but I think we're only hearing one side, and throwing out the idea that there was going to be a new regime onto the back of this stalled process sent real alarm bells, and we have to say that type of operation would not be acceptable to anybody and would aggravate the situation even further.
Thank you. Minister.
Could I say, Ceann Comhairle, in more general terms, it's important that we continue to report progress on the matter of prison reform in Northern Ireland. Comprehensive reform of the Northern Ireland Prison Service, based on the October 2011 review conducted by Dame Ann Orrs, concluded in March of this year. And it's disappointing that, despite the prison reform process, the inspection report found that conditions for prisoners under the categories of safety, respect and purposeful activity had all deteriorated. Only in the area of resettlement were prisoners experiencing acceptable outcomes. However, I wish to assure Deputy Daly that both myself and my officials will continue to monitor the situation, and I'm anxious that the recommendations contained in the inspection report are themselves an agenda for change, and that we can see change and chart progress in that regard. And I was pleased to hear from Minister Ford that progress is being made on this issue, and I look forward to seeing this progress being demonstrated when the inspectors return in January.